Welcome to another edition of the AfterBuzz. How you doing? Brandon Coates here, your host. Producer Dave sitting over in the chair, hanging out. Kind of jam-packed schedule this week for me. Don't know if you guys know this, but I was doing the morning show plus doing Loudwire nights. So it's a lot of on-air time. So it's very busy. But again, as always, welcome to the AfterBuzz. If you're here live, you are more than welcome to jump on into the YouTube chat. You can type questions, comments, whatever you may have right there for us. And be sure you're also clicking the like button down below. You're subscribing, and you want to get those notifications for when we go live, because sometimes we're a little bit off. It happens sometimes. But anyway, so we're going to jump right into this week's AfterBuzz. And first thing I want to talk about is fantasy football. You a big fantasy football guy, Producer Dave?
Yes, we just had a draft this past weekend.
There you go. How many, are you in 1 league, 2 leagues, 3 leagues, 4 leagues?
There was 1 year where I was in 4, but you know what? I'm just doing 1.
That's too much, right?
Oh yeah.
So
a lot of juggling.
When did you start? How many years ago?
Probably about 10 years ago.
That's around, I think, the time that I did it. I think it was either 06, possibly 07 when I did it. So anyway, been doing fantasy football actually a little bit longer, I guess, maybe 12, 13 years. I think it was 07, because the first year I did it, it was a league down in South Florida for the company that I worked for. And it was just, the guy that did the morning show for the Rock Show, he started a league, and it was a bunch of us. And I remember that was the year, because one guy got Tom Brady and Randy Moss, and he just, annihilated everybody that year.
Wow.
And since then, there was 1 year I had NFL Sunday Ticket, and that's what I did on my Sundays, man. I spent my Sundays watching football, and I got really good at fantasy football. And it was to the point, the most leagues that I was ever in was 3. And there was 1 year I won 2, and I missed the finals by like a couple of points. And I still remember that year, because that was the season where I was in Disneyland with my family. And and this was really before like iPhones and Androids were a regular thing, to where you could change your lineup on your phone. I mean, you could, but it wasn't so easy. And I remember sitting there, because I was like, once I get into the park, I don't think I'm really going to have reception to do this. So I got to make the decision now. And I can't remember who the hell I put in the lineup, but I remember I took Mike Wallace out. And I think he was already on the Dolphins at this point. And he went off for like 100-something yards and 2 touchdowns. And he would have vaulted me into the finals in that league as well. So I could have won all 3. But instead, I went 2 for 3. And then it started to get to the point where it's like the winning, it's like I don't care. It's not fun anymore, because I get that there's a skill there. And if you're really good at it and you do all the research, that's great. But there's so much that comes down to who's going to get injured, who's not going to get injured. I mean, that quite frankly is what comes down to a lot of fantasy football. You're obviously going to take that into account when you're drafting somebody. You're going to want to be careful about potentially drafting somebody who, has an injury history, somebody who might get hurt a lot. Like, you're going to be very wary of that person. But it's kind of lost some of its flair, I would say, in regards to fantasy football. But I'm only in 1 league this year. That's it. It's the league that I run. This is a league that I've been running now for this one probably 10 years or so.
10
this
years,
league,
you're the commissioner.
About 10 years.
Wow.
But there was one point where I had a bunch of people in the league, and I didn't hang out with those people anymore, and I didn't really know them. Like, some of them were like friends of an ex-girlfriend that I had. So, and family members of an ex as well. And so I was like, you know what? Like, I need to reboot this thing. Like, I'm not dating this person anymore. Then, these people, like, and I even texted her to be like, would you be cool if, we just moved on from this? And you guys, and she was like, yeah, we're perfectly fine with that. So I basically reset the league, rather than just trying to clear house with everybody. And it's gone from 14 players to 12 players to 8 players to 10 players. And this year we're at 8 players. It's one of the whole reasons I started the league was my mom and sister had been interested in fantasy football. So I jumped all over that train to let them know, like, hey, like, let's do this thing. So I want to make sure that I have this up there for them to play every year. My mom gets into it, man. She's always got her little notepad before the draft. She'll sit there and she does her research on her laptop, and she just writes down the names of the players that she wants. Yeah. Like, that's what she does, and she does really well. There was either last year or 2 years ago. It had to been 2 years ago, because I didn't win it last year. But yeah, 2 years ago, I was in the finals against my mom. I ended up beating her. I won the whole thing. But she's pretty stinking good at fantasy football. And so I finally got, like last year, I had toyed with the idea of just not even doing it. Like, have you ever taken a year off? Have you just not done it since you started?
Oh yeah.
There's been years where you haven't done it at all?
Yes, sir.
Does it feel weird?
When football season starts, it does feel weird, and the reason why I think it feels weird is because you're not invested in all the players that you would normally draft and
Mhm.
watching their games or following their stats and all that. So that's I guess the reason I feel.
That's the one thing that I try to tell people, especially is like, 'cause when it comes to fantasy football, it gets you watching teams that you would never watch play. Like when I had the Sunday ticket, like I was watching legitimately, just these garbage teams play because I had a vested interest. And it wasn't even necessarily players that I had on my team, but maybe players I was scouting. There was one year when I had Sunday ticket and I was watching, I think it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play.
Mhm.
I can't remember who the run. It might have been a year Doug Martin was a big guy. Like he was one of the big fantasy football studs, and he got hurt. And they kept saying that I think I'm going to screw his name. It was either Scott Leonard or Sean Leonard was going to be the backup. He was going to be the guy that was going to fill in. And as I'm watching Tampa Bay play, I'm like, no, it's Bobby Rainey. Bobby Rainey is a better running back. So everybody else put in their waiver claims to get the guy that they said was going to be the starter. I put mine in for Bobby Rainey. He put me in the finals that year. Like that, because I mean, the injury happened way late in the season. It was during the playoffs. I just made a waiver claim for him, got him, and he put up like 32 points or something like that because he went off the first game that he played. And then of course for the championship, I played him again and he didn't do shit. But he did enough in that first matchup that I had him in, which was I think the semifinals, to vault me into the finals, which was pretty cool. But yeah, I've toyed with the idea of not playing at all, just not wanting to just do it because like even last year, like I was playing passively. I wasn't involved in my draft. I set it and let everybody else draft. The computer did it for me. James Conner saved my season last year because the computer drafted me a shit team. Like it sucked. The team that I had was terrible, but it was before Le'Veon Bell was officially held out, so nobody had James Conner. So I scooped him up off the waiver wire, and that dude saved my season. He was the only reason I won even a couple of games. I don't even think I made the playoffs last year. But anyway, so this year, I'm like, I'll do it, but we need to see. There's a couple of guys who they don't really check their lineups. I'm like, I need to get rid of some people here. Like, if you're not going to check your lineup, you're out of the league. Like, I understand your want and desire to do it, but if you're that guy that it gets to the point where you're having a crappy season, no. Like, if you're not going to set your lineup, it's not fair to the rest of the league. So anyway, so this year I have convinced my wife to take over the team.
Hey, excellent.
So she's going to be basically running the team. I'm kind of coaching her. She did have a couple of players that she definitely wanted. She was very adamant about getting Dak Prescott as the starting quarterback just because she knows who that is. Although we were going to take Aaron Rodgers, but my mom scooped him up like 3 picks before us because the whole time we're sitting there, we're over at her parents' house. And so as we're sitting and hanging out over at her parents' house, I'm doing the draft on my phone. And as I'm watching, I'm like, oh, like Aaron Rodgers, we should probably get him because we're already pretty good on running backs and wide receivers. I'm like, now's the time we want to get a quarterback. And there he goes. And there's a huge drop-off because a lot of the quarterbacks had already been taken at that point. And Aaron Rodgers goes off the board. I told her, I was like, well, let's wait. Like, Dak's going to be available in 3 rounds. Let's load up on running backs. And I've got a pretty decent team. Obviously, with Dak Prescott being the starter, Christian McCaffrey. We had the number 2 overall pick, so we got Christian McCaffrey. Man, I almost went with Alvin Kamara because that guy is such a freak. Like, but I think both of them are going to be huge stat monsters this year, and especially Kamara because Mark Ingram isn't there anymore. Mark Ingram's not in New Orleans anymore, so Kamara could be the lead guy out of there. But we got stacked on running backs. I did pick Joe Mixon. I did tell my wife, I was like, he beats up women. I'm just warning you. And she looks at me and she goes, is he going to get us in the championship? I mean, she was joking, but it was hilarious. Like the way that she was able to do it with a straight face. So ultimately, I don't think she really wanted to, but I ended up drafting that piece of shit anyway. And then like our flex is Leonard Fournette, who I'm telling you right now, I did no research going into the season when it came to fantasy football, nothing. But I think Leonard Fournette's going to have a big year this year because I kept reading this article on him about how he was pissed last year. He was pissed about losing. He cut all these people out of his life. He basically became secluded for like 30 days, went on this insane rocky training regimen, dropped like 20 pounds, and is in the best shape he's ever been. And I'm like, that's my guy. And we got him in like the 4th or 5th round or something like that. It wasn't even a top tier round for Leonard Fournette. But anyway, so that's what we got going on. Frank, what are you saying here? Don't let this distract you from the fact that in 1966, Al Bundy scored 4 touchdowns in a single game at Polk High. This is true. Al Bundy did have 4 touchdowns for Polk High. I didn't know that they actually had the year. Actually, no, I take it back. I think they would have mentioned that on Married with Children. But Al Bundy, touchdown machine at Polk High. So anyway, so that's kind of the fantasy football update here. I don't want to get too much into the actual, like, hey, who are you going to pick or these other things that you're going to do, because that's a big tune-up for anybody who's not into fantasy football. But if you've never played, give it a shot. You know,
It's fun.
you still have NFL season starts tomorrow.
First game's tomorrow?
Tomorrow, Green Bay
Wow.
versus Chicago. They're
Okay.
kicking off the 100th season of the NFL. So they got that thing kicking off. So you still got some time. Now, just to be forewarned, I think I have mentioned this on the AfterBuzz before. I went and did just a random fantasy baseball league. This was 4 or 5 years ago, I think. And I was looking for something to do, something to kind of occupy my time. And I don't think I'd ever played fantasy baseball before that. It's only been fantasy football.
Mhm.
So as I'm doing fantasy baseball, I jump into this random league, and it was specifically for Twins fans. So as I did it, it was a rotisserie league. The scoring is way different because, you know, the gameplay is daily, and fantasy baseball is a lot more difficult than fantasy football. Oh shit! This is why I did it, because I also played fantasy basketball this year, and I won that league as well.
You won that.
The first year I played fantasy basketball, I won the whole damn thing. So I was like, well, let's ride this tide. Let's keep going, baby. So I did a little fantasy baseball that year, and I was doing good. And it's me and this other guy, these other couple of guys jockeying for first place and everything else. And then all of a sudden, at the final, like 2 days of the season or something like that. No, it was the final day of the season. I've won. Like, I had enough points. Like, I was good. Like, I'm like, shit, this is cool. Like, I just won another fantasy sports league. This is great. The day after the league, all of a sudden, I check to see who's the champion. All of a sudden, it's the guy who started the league. And I'm like, what the hell? So I go in, and I start looking at it. This dickhole went in and changed the scores
No way.
to make himself the champion. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Wow.
I mean, as far as I could tell, like, unless there's something on ESPN that showed something else, but like, it was dropping off my players' scores, and I even emailed ESPN about it. They didn't give a fuck because we weren't paying anything for it. Like, they don't give a shit. So I was like, fine, whatever. Like, if that's really what you want, you're more than welcome to take your fucking, you know, your fantasy football or your fantasy baseball fucking title, you loser. But anyway, so just be forewarned. But if you get a chance to, and if you can, go ahead and do it. There's even if you just do like the 1 day, is DraftKings and stuff still a thing?
Yes.
They still do that stuff, right?
The money ones, I guess.
Yeah. So then, but those are like 1 week. So if you ever want to do that, give that a shot, man. I mean, just put in a couple of bucks. Select some players. Those are obviously done differently than the season-long fantasy seasons or the fantasy leagues, but it's a lot of fun, man. It's an absolute blast, and it definitely adds more to the season.
If you also, if you didn't want to keep track of individual players, you can do that weekly pick'em. I think you guys have something like that.
We do have something. You can go to klaq.com if you'd like to, and you can do the weekly pick'ems where you pick who you think is going to win each game. And we got some pretty cool prizes for that stuff too, if you guys want to check that out. Frank is saying, did we see that Chris Jericho had his AEW belt stolen while he was eating at a Longhorn Steakhouse here in Tallahassee? That's one of those redneck things I've ever seen written in the YouTube chat, Frank. But it's fantastic. I appreciate you for that. No, I didn't. But he's like, I did notice that Chris Jericho ended up in AEW. First of all, I thought AEW was a root beer, but it's actually a world wrestling. Like it's a wrestling league. It's a wrestling federation, I guess. And no, AEW is not the root. It's ANW. But no, I noticed that he's looking a little bit more haggard. Like Chris Jericho is one of those guys who always still looked relatively healthy. And I remember hearing from Tony, they did this thing with Chris Jericho and his band Fozzy, where they were originally going to play I think it was a show in every time zone across the United States, and he was going to be here in El Paso, and something happened to where that didn't happen. But anyway, Tony still traveled with them. They did multiple kind of shows throughout this day, and she was like, he drank vodka like a fucking fish, like just slugging it like it was water. And I think it might be starting to show because Chris Jericho, yeah, there's producer Dave over there is looking at some pictures. Like he's not looking as healthy as he used to. He's starting to get that alcoholic face that looks like pretty swollen and stuff, and maybe he's had a couple of surgeries. But he's always been a super entertaining guy. Like I've always really enjoyed Chris Jericho. But that it's funny because that story from Tony always pops up where she talks about how he was just fucking wasted, like the whole trip, man. Like the dude was just hammered. But anyway, thank you for the input there, Frank. Again, if you guys want to, put shit into the YouTube chat. You know, you guys are always more than welcome to put a comment or a question in there. The next thing I have to do is I have to say that I'm so happy now. Lucy, the new dog, is worm free. She can be around the other dogs now. They fucking hate her because she's obnoxious. She's a puppy. They both start growling and yapping at her. She actually there's Lucy, which is the German Shepherd. I'm going to say Shar-Pei puppy. There's my dog Chewy, who's about this wide, about this tall. He's about the same size as she is now, which obviously she's going to outgrow him. And then there's Rocky, who's a little Yorkie. And when it comes to Chewy, Lucy doesn't do anything back. She likes to jump on him for some strange reason. Like she legitimately jumps on his back. It's weird, which pisses him off. It's nothing but growling and snarling. And then she'll start to like play around with Rocky, and then he'll start to growl and snarl and bark at her. And she actually started to growl and bark back yesterday, something I had not seen yet from this puppy dog. But it's so much nicer being able to get her out of the kennel and running around with the other dogs and playing. The kid now can come outside and play with her. Those two were like just best friends at this point because they're just running around the yard, chasing after each other, and it's completely adorable. And I'm happy that she's able to now kind of go be a puppy. Like she's not in quarantine anymore. And then the other thing too is that I got an appointment today for Tweedledee and Tweedledum. That's Chewy and Rocky to go get all their shots updated and stuff as well. But yeah, so Lucy, badass dog.
That's good.
All right, next topic here, and pretty much the final topic. Unless you guys really have anything that you want to bring up. One of the reasons I'm going to try to cut this one short here is because somebody had made a comment in the Facebook chat last week about the audio and video not matching up. It's been like that for like 2 or 3 years now on the morning show because we got this camera system that was a security camera system. We got it on trade, but it's not designed for audio. It's only designed for video. And so it comes in through the internet, which means that the connection is going to be different every single time, which means we can't set it so that the audio and visual match up every single time, which is irritating as all hell. Which at this point, I can't listen. I can't tell if my voice is matching what's happening now. But anyway, so Buzz brought it up in the meeting, and I'm told him, like, dude, this is like we've brought this up multiple times. Like, why are you bringing this up again? Because we even had some corporate guys come in and like, just tell us what you need. If you tell us what you need, we'll sign off on it. And so I went there. I'm like, we need cameras, we need this, we need this. And he's like, oh, he's writing all these notes. Fucking nothing, man. That was like a year and a half ago. Nothing. So anyway, but this will show you the kind of pull that Buzz has in the company. Is he sent one email. Like I sent him an original email of like, hey, this is what we're looking at. Because I asked producer Dave over here, hey, what do you think we should do for cameras? Something that's affordable, but the quality will be nice, that, you know, will work for what we need. So he recommended these cameras. I put that in an email to Buzz. He forwarded that on to the corporate guys. And the very next day, everything's been approved all of a sudden. And they're going to say, just go ahead and sign off on it, pay for it, and then we'll go from there. So once we're done here, I'm taking producer Dave. We're going to go hook up with Dave or the Lifesaver, and we're going to kind of go through cameras, cables, like all that shit. So hopefully your viewer experience for the Facebook live feed during the morning show will be better, where better camera angles, we can actually move them around. That's one thing that people always complain about is the guest camera. I designed that one specifically so it would be right in front of their face, and the microphone, which is where it's supposed to be, right here. But unfortunately, most guests don't realize that. So they put, and this is something Lisa's supposed to do, but I don't think she does it, is actually have them put it right here, but instead they put it here. So you have the microphone stand sitting like that, which sucks, but it's not the end of the world. And now, fortunately, we'll be able to kind of move the cameras, and we'll have a lot more flexibility when it comes to that stuff. So that's going to be one of those things that we're going to go do here in just a minute. But one of the last topic I wanted to bring up here is the comics I'm reading right now, Absolute Carnage. Are you familiar with Carnage,
No,
Producer Dave?
No, not at all.
Are you familiar with Venom?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, real quick rundown. Venom was introduced. Hold on. See, I should have had all this stuff open because I wanted to make sure that I had all of the dates down properly. But Venom, I think he was introduced. Buzz said back when he was in college was what he said. His first appearance. Damn you, Wikipedia, and you're begging for money. First appearance was 1984 for Venom. So the backstory here, and ignore the Tom Hardy movie with Venom. So the true story with Venom was that, and actually quite technically, the Spider-Man 3, the one with Tobey Maguire and Eric Foreman as Eddie Brock. So basically, it's like an alien symbiote. It comes down, attaches itself to Spider-Man. He notices it starts to make him weird, so he gets it off of him. It attaches itself to the cameraman, Eddie Brock, and then he becomes Venom. And he's originally a bad guy. He wants vengeance against Spider-Man and Peter Parker. But he became a huge fan favorite. This is the same thing that happened to Deadpool. Deadpool was a bad guy, but the way that he was written with the comedy and everything else, he suddenly became this fan favorite. So they're like, well, shit, we kind of got to change this. Now, they do still do bad things. Like, Deadpool is still kind of a dick in the comics, and he does do bad things. But the whole point is that they're now changing it to basically being a good guy. Like, Venom starts fighting crime. And a real quick side note, Nick just put in here about the Hulk versus Wolverine. I'm going to get to that in just a minute here as well. So that happens. And then ultimately, when it comes to Carnage is kind of not a rip-off, but he's a side character from Venom because he also has that symbiote. It's just this like gooey stuff that attaches to you, and it turns you into that being. And he was a serial killer, Cletus Cassidy, I believe was his name. And for some reason, my internet has stopped working. That's awesome. I fucking hate our internet here. But anyway, so it's Cletus Cassidy. It's Carnage. And he was a serial killer, and he's a psychopath. And Carnage is like one of the worst villains in all of Marvel. And so what Absolute Carnage has done is they found out where these original alien symbiotes come from, or symbiotes, whatever you want to call them, where they've originally come from. And they kind of have their own god. And for years, that god has been trapped, but now Carnage wants to unleash him because all he wants is death. Like, he's a terrible human being / villain / alien who just wants shit destroyed. And it's a fantastic story arc so far. And it's crossing a whole bunch of different comics and stuff, but there's also the ones that are just called Absolute Carnage, and they're pretty fucking amazing. I'm just telling you that right now. So if you get a chance to go check that out, I would. And then to what Nick was saying in the YouTube chat is that the Hulk versus Wolverine movie is in talks to come to the MCU. One of the important points of this is that Universal still technically owns the rights to the Hulk. It's not Disney. Despite the fact he was in the Avengers movies, there's a reason they were able to do that and even put him in Thor Ragnarok, is because he's not the main character. They have the rights to put him in the movies just so long as it's not a Hulk movie. So if they wanted to do a Hulk versus Wolverine, they can do that because he wouldn't be just this main character out of everybody else. So that would be amazing. And Buzz was even talking about it. There was one of the storylines back in the day during one of those What Ifs. That's one of the TV shows they're having. It's going to be on Disney Plus coming out soon. I think that one's animated. They're using the real voices, the actual actors' voices, but it's going to be animated. And that's all like the what if. Like one of the and this is going to jump to DC instead of Marvel, but for Batman, like what if he had died, not his parents, and his dad ends up becoming Batman. And he's like a super evil Batman who just fucking kills everybody. It's kind of sweet. But yeah, so that would be pretty cool. Is if the Hulk versus Wolverine is able to hit the big screen. And Buzz asked the question right now today, right out of the gate, who would play Wolverine?
Wow.
Stop to think about that one for a minute. So, anyway, that's where we're going to wrap up this edition of the AfterBuzz. We've got some fancy cameras that we're going to go start setting up, or we're not going to set them up. We don't have them yet, but hopefully soon. Oh, I'm begging, knock on wood, that we're going to be able to get these cameras set up for you guys, so that the Facebook Live feed is going to be just 1,000 times better for you. And then another thing that I'm going to be working on, once our schedules kind of settle down here, is that for me and Shim, is that we're going to start putting up Rockstar 101 as a video. Like, we're going to link it so that it'll be the camera here in El Paso, and then it'll be whether he's down in Australia at his house, if he's here in the States touring. As long as he has a webcam, we're going to make it so that we're not only going to upload that thing to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts, you'll also be able to find it over on YouTube as well. So at least that's the plan. It's a very tentative plan at this point. If you guys haven't checked out the most recent episode of Rockstar 101, we talk about Tool, the new album. He mentions, because one of the questions that gets brought up is, do you listen to an album as a whole, as an entirety, like front to back, or are you listening to individual songs? Like, Producer Dave, what do you tend to do?
It just depends really. There's some albums that are great from track 1 all the way to track 20, but there's some albums that I'll specifically buy just for one track.
That's kind of what my answer was when Shim brought up that question, was like, with Tool, I'm going to listen to that thing front to back every single time. But there's others, like I've got a workout playlist that I'm constantly updating on Spotify. So the way that I adjust this playlist is every single time, if a song comes up and I'm skipping past it, if I skip past it if I skip past it 3 or more times, it's out of the playlist. I give it the boot. And one of the cool things about Spotify is when you have a playlist, if you scroll all the way towards the bottom, it'll give you recommendations. And every few days I go there and I'll just start listening to songs. And if I like one that's recommended, I'll put it in the playlist. So then once I'm working out again, if I notice I'm skipping past a song, that one's gone. Like Seven Dust, that was a band I put a lot of songs in on this last one, just because they have such a massive catalog of music. I only want to pick a few out so I can put them into this playlist. But when it comes to Tool, I'm listening front to back. And one of the reasons he brought that up as well is that Ed Sheeran song with Bruno Mars and Chris Stapleton that I know we're playing it on Loudwire Nights. Like, you'll hear it tonight on Loudwire Nights. It's a pretty good song. And then we got on the topic of Chris Stapleton and how badass that guy. Are you familiar with Chris Stapleton at all?
I'm a country singer.
Badass country guy.
Right.
Like he is authentic, just awesome dude. And for some reason, his look, he's got the big beard, he's got the the hat and everything else. And for some reason, he always reminds me of the movie Blaze. That's the one that Ethan Hawke came in to promote. I think it was last year. And Blaze was the country music. He really couldn't even be considered a star yet, because he just kind of toured around. Everybody knew him on the underground, but nobody mainstream really knew who he was. He was the guy that was shot and killed on stage. So we talk about that. Oh, and the phone lines cut out on Shim and I, because one thing not a lot of people know, and I'm willing to kind of give you guys the secret here when it comes to Rockstar 101. So he's down in Australia. I'm up here, and we're recording. So I'm recording into my computer. He's recording into his computer. I've got an earpiece in here on my Bluetooth through either my phone or through a FaceTime, so that I can hear him. And then I've got my cans on over that so I can hear myself in the microphone. And then basically we both record it. He sends me his file, and then I kind of just put the two together and I line them up. And that's how Rockstar 101 is created. And I knew that I was doing a good job making it sound like we're in the same room, because my dad's wife said, specifically, she was like, she's like, I can't believe something about us both being in the same room. And my dad told her, he's like, no, Shim's actually down in Australia. She had no idea that we were actually in the same room, which I thought was pretty cool. So job successful. Yeah, fuck yeah. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this edition of the AfterBuzz. A big thank you to producer Dave, especially considering we're about to go head over and we're going to go work on the camera system for the morning show, so that hopefully you guys have a much more enjoyable experience when it comes to Facebook Live soon. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, or anything, you can always hit me up. You can send it to the Buzz Adams Morning Show Facebook page. We are on Twitter at Buzz Adams Show. I do have an Instagram account. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's Brandon_goat_coats. And of course, that's Coates with an E at the end, Coates. So you can find me there. And on Rockstar 101, if you have any questions for Shim ever on that, hit him up on Twitter. It's at ShimMoore is where you can find him there. On that note, have yourselves a fantastic Wednesday. Trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting. NFL starts tomorrow, which is going to be awesome. Oh, and I'm off on Friday because I'm going to be hanging out with my kid at her school. I'm going to be a watchdog on Friday. But on that note, have yourselves a great Wednesday. As always, 10:30 if you're watching this recorded, 10:30 Mountain Time right here on the KLAQ YouTube channels where you can see this. Make sure you're clicking the thumbs up button down there. You're clicking like and getting subscriptions and you're getting all the notifications and all that other fun stuff here for the KLAQ YouTube channel. And on that note, we will see you bright and early tomorrow morning on the Buzz Adams Morning Show at 5 a.m. Mountain Time. See you.